The Center for Unhindered Living presents Plus Size Polyamory with Judy McMahon, where our motto is, don't follow the crowd, follow your heart. Hey everybody, this is Judy McMath with the Center for Unhindered Living, and this is Plus Size Polyamory, episode 14. And today we're talking to Meghan Lape, who's the founder and CEO of Conscious Impact Financial Planning, a socially responsible investment firm. Meghan has, for the past 11 years, conducted financial life planning, counseling, and education, and is dedicated to empowering others to transform their finances into personal advocacy. As a member of the LGBTQA+ and polyamorous communities, she is bringing her wonderful knowledge and experience into enhancing clients' relationship with their money, no matter what their sexual orientation or the number of relationships they are involved in. So Meghan, thanks for being here today.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Okay, so my first question is this. Up in that little blurb that I just read, it says that you plan to transform their finances into personal advocacy. Could you explain what you mean by that?
So that kind of comes in a couple different forms. So most people are already advocating on their own behalf when, for instance, they support a small business that they like, or perhaps when they see the behavior of a business where, they're using child labor or something that they disagree with, and they'll stop buying from that company. So everyone's already starting to do that kind of advocacy. But in the financial planning arena, we have a couple more opportunities where we can choose to invest in certain companies or divest in certain companies, making sure that, basically you're not giving money to someone who would, see you in jail. I know being queer can be a felony in up to 73 countries. So, you don't necessarily want to have your money support things that would support you. So anything from, investment, divestment, supporting small businesses, or choosing not to support a business, or even proxy voting, or even getting involved in your community and local grassroots things can be done as well, just depending on your interest and what you're actually trying to promote.
Okay, great. Well, that's a pretty broad area of services. So what qualifications do you and your team have to do the work that you do?
So I'm a certified financial planner. I'm an accredited financial counselor and an enrolled agent. I also work with my associate, Mark, who is also a certified financial planner and an accredited financial counselor. All of those are recognized in the respective fields. So one is financial planning, one is financial counseling, and the other is tax. The IRS actually gives the license for enrolled agent. And so they do require things like the CFP requires a bachelor's degree. I happen to have a master's of science in financial planning, though that's not necessarily the level that's required. I just happen to have it. But yeah, we're definitely on the level as far as all of the requirements we need for financial planning.
Okay, great. All right. So what services do you provide, and how does this benefit the polyamorous community?
So I can't say that I know of any other financial planners who can, or who will even give credence to polyamory and trying to make that actually work. So it's kind of a brand new field as far as I'm concerned, but I think that financial counseling especially is really something that needs to be done in the polyamorous community. But if you're working with a practitioner who doesn't understand it, you're not going to get really great advice. They're going to detach themselves, and they're not really going to be incentivized to watch you succeed, because secretly they may not want you to succeed. So their advice could, I won't say it's tainted, but definitely you lose some connection there. So especially with financial counseling in particular, I would say that getting everyone on the same page is really important. And as a financial planner, planning long-term, for instance, I am aware of a situation that's luckily not my client, but where one of the members of a triad passed, and she had a young daughter, and in normal life that family would have grown up together, but because she was the unmarried person in that triad, the daughter's guardianship went to someone that person didn't really necessarily want the child to go to. So in the financial planning side, estate planning, there's a lot that can be done as well.
Right. Well, that's great. Okay. So what's the difference between financial counseling and financial planning?
So financial planning is very strictly regulated because it contains financial advice. And so basically for anything where you would ask, should I buy this stock? Should I sell this stock? Should I put this into my 401k in this fund? That sort of thing, it has regulation. The SEC oversees it, FINRA oversees it. I actually have to do audits by a state securities board. So right now I'm registered in Texas and finishing my registration in Colorado. And so financial planning and financial advice has a lot more hoops to go through, whereas financial counseling is kind of everything else, like the little things where you don't necessarily need financial advice, but maybe you need help on, should I buy, am I ready to buy a new car? Should I buy a used car? Should I, some of the little everyday things, how to budget, how to do just kind of normal everyday financial decisions, but not necessarily advice.
Okay. Excuse me. So what do you think is the best way to initiate the money conversation in a polyamorous relationship?
Well, I know the two things we're most known for is communication and Google Calendars, but this one will fall under communication for sure.
Okay.
A lot of people give, I get in the Big Bang Theory, Sheldon has this contract, this rent, for the people who rent the house. And a lot of people make fun of it and they think it's a crazy, terrible idea. But honestly, it's one of the coolest things I've ever seen. Just starting relationships with a contract is a really, really superb form of communication. And that could be a, financial goals contract, or, I use contract loosely. There's things like kink contracts. Any part of your relationship can have a contract, or at least some sort of written communication. So then when you go back and you try, because when you remember conversations, they don't always stay true to what actually happened. By writing them down, especially when you first get into a relationship, no matter what type it is, but financial especially, is going to make sure that no one's feelings get hurt unnecessarily because it's already been discussed before it became a problem.
Right. Okay. So you would suggest in the beginning of a relationship, in the very beginning?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
It could even start on the first date. Who pays for the first date? That's the beginning of financial conversation right there.
Okay. Well, that's interesting because I just had that conversation with someone 5 minutes before stepping up to this microphone. Who's supposed to pay for the date? And I said, this is the 21st century. You don't have to pay for the date, but not everyone feels that way. Okay. Do you recommend separate or joint accounts for each partner? And do you know of any banks that allow more than two people on a joint account?
So both. I think that everyone should have a separate savings account or separate checking and a joint, or sometimes a household account. But I do believe that everyone should have access to their own money they don't have to defend if they make a purchase out of. Sometimes just fun money, or just something that's yours. And sometimes, especially like when we get into an argument, let's just say it's a silly argument, but knowing that if we wanted to, we had some resources to ourselves that didn't belong to the other person, just makes fights easier. You're not fighting to the death. It's not like, oh, I have to make up with this person because otherwise I'm destitute. And just having some money of your own, even if it's not a lot, can just soothe that. Even if you're not it's not like you're going to leave them, but sometimes it just makes the arguments less severe because you're not so emotionally wrapped up in that, because you have something of your own. So I think both is a really good thing, especially and having joint accounts for household expenses, and have the conversation between what is equitable, what is fair, because sometimes those things they're not the same in all relationships. Someone makes more money and they could contribute more. Someone maybe will have the children or have more children, and maybe they need to bring more money to the table because they're supporting more people, or they have more of the family that they have on their side. And there's no right answer at all. It's the right answer is the one that everyone chooses. So what is equal and what is fair is not necessarily the same thing to everybody, and it's really important to have that kind of conversation up front. And when you start making joint accounts, you're going to start having those conversations. And quite actually, honestly, lots of banks, you can have more than two members. They just don't really advertise it. It might be a bias of their own, but I bet that whatever bank that you currently have, you can ask them, can I have a bank account with 3 or more? I think most banks don't go more than 5 as a rule,
Right.
but there's nothing stopping them saying that you can only have 2. And if you feel uncomfortable, you can just say, oh, it's for me and my roommates. We're making an account for shared household expenses. And you usually won't get any guff from that. Like they won't really push back on that in any way, because
Right.
that's a normal thing for people. So
Sure. Okay. Do you help people with their credit issues?
I do. So that's more on the financial counseling side, because usually people who have credit issues are really at the point where they need financial advice. But yes, definitely, I have seen my fair share of credit reports and helped people try to figure out what they should pay, if they should pay, or sometimes they will fall off their credit report if it's been on there long enough. And then, of course, I work a lot with the military as well, and sometimes security clearances become an issue with credit. So I have a lot of experience trying to straighten those sorts of things out as well.
Okay, great. Well, we all could use that. So what if the polycule wants to buy a house together or invest income for retirement together? What would you suggest there?
So that's perfectly reasonable, and because any members of a household would want to do that when they've got to the point where they know they're committed. And as long as they're all in agreement of, yes, we are this committed. Yes, we understand that if we ever want to untangle our expenses, our finances, it will be something similar to a divorce, with the way that the law has to untangle those things once you put them together. And if everyone is on the same page saying, yes, we accept all those terms and conditions, then absolutely having 3 incomes makes everything better. And I do have clients who are both, they went in on a house together, and they are planning for a pregnancy where all 3 of them are going to raise a child. So I've seen it happen, and as long as everyone understands, I feel like it can be done very easily.
And honestly, how many people in monogamous relationships end up getting divorced and have to untangle all that anyway?
Right.
So, it's not anything new.
Yeah, the risk is not greater. It's just, I guess maybe it's my nature where it's like, I just want to make sure everyone understands, but quite honestly, yeah, it's the same risk.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so what are some of the biggest challenges when it comes to the finances of a polyamorous individuals or polycules?
I would say that whole conversation about what is equal and what is fair, because that is something that can get people's feelings hurt real quick. And sometimes it's things that we bring in, like money scripts we have from our childhood. Sometimes it's just societal scripts we hear, like, men pay for dates. See, that was one you gave, like, or excuse me, actually, I assumed it was a male, but that's the stereotype, right? So these conversations can be kind of touchy, but having them at the beginning of the relationship will make it so that no one just leaves and decides that's the straw. That's the time when it's most negotiable, and everyone's still got the love feelings. So it's easier to work through those problems without getting so much emotional baggage involved.
Right, but if they didn't do that at the beginning and it has to come later, can you help them with that?
Absolutely. That definitely is the counseling part.
Okay. Right, because we all know everyone's not going to do it the way they should.
Well,
So,
and there's no right way to do anything, to be quite honest.
right.
So
Yeah, you're right. Okay, so of all the families that you've helped, just off the top of your head, what percentage of poly families that invest together for retirement and stay together long term are able to actually take advantage of these things? I guess I'm saying, how many of them are successfully staying together and taking advantage of this retirement income or whatever? What percentage would you say?
So I can't say that I have anyone who's actually at the retirement stage yet.
Okay.
But for all of the polyamorous families I serve right now, I'm at a success rate of 100%. Now, okay. I say that, but I don't think I get to take the credit for that, because, well, honestly, I think these relationships are succeeding because the people in them are coming to the table saying, finances are important to me. Let's do what we can to make sure finances are put first. And I think a person who has the maturity to come to the relationship with those things are going to be successful anyway. And I'm just a facilitator for the success that they're kind of setting up themselves.
Okay, well, that makes sense. So walk us through exactly what would happen if someone, say, as a result of hearing this program, was to call you up and say they wanted your services. What could they expect?
Sure. So basically the services are separated into two groups. There is the self-service, someone who kind of wants to do their own financial planning, doesn't want financial advice, but perhaps financial counseling. And then there's a full service. Basically, you want an advisor. You want to know, you want someone to do all the research for you. You want someone to tell you what the best advice is, all of that. That's the full service. Most people do fall under the self-service where they're not really ready to, commit to the cost and all of the extras that comes with full service. But for self-service, basically what they would do is they'd sign up for a program that I call CIFP Academy. And that comes with financial education. So a bunch of modules about, what goes into your credit score. There are a bunch of educational tools. It comes with financial planning software. So you can put in all of your numbers and see, am I prepared for retirement based on the calculations the software gives. And then it also has some really great checklists and financial counseling once per quarter. It can be more than that. Especially if you want to separate it into a bunch of smaller little sessions. But yeah, basically it comes with financial counseling, financial planning software, and then a bunch of educational material to try to help you make better decisions for yourself. And the counseling, of course, could be a good second opinion or working out some of the things that maybe confuse you or overwhelm you. For the full service, that basically is full contact with me or my associate Mark, where if you want to know, even before you buy something, if it's a good idea, if you want to know which stock to buy, if you want to know what we think about your retirement plan, and if you're doing it as efficiently as possible. If you want someone to do your taxes for you, that's part of the full service as well. But basically for someone to handle all your finances, give you all the advice, and always be there whenever you have questions, that's the full service package.
Okay. And so can you give us an idea of the difference in cost between those two, or?
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. So the self-service is $100 per month, and there's no requirement to stay in for a certain amount of months to cancel at any time. And the full service is $500 a month, and there is a 12-month minimum because we do some very intensive financial planning and stock screening and that sort of thing.
Right. Okay. Well, thanks. Okay. So now let's say someone wanted you to help with estate planning. Obviously, that would require some legal paperwork to be filed. Do you have lawyers that work with you?
So I work with a company called EP Navigator. And so I work with them, and they have the lawyers on staff. So what will happen is to do estate planning, that's part of the full service program. And what we'll do is I usually send out my clients a checklist and questionnaire, just kind of going through some things that they need to decide before we even start the appointment. And then we'll go into the different documents. So there's going to be a healthcare power of attorney, a financial power of attorney, guardianship nomination, and then either a trust or a will, depending on your circumstance. One will be recommended over the other. And then EP Navigator actually assigns a lawyer to your case, depending on what state you live in, because they have to be licensed in the state you live in. And they prepare the paperwork for you. You still would probably have to file it. I believe that there is a way that I can do it, but I have not yet done that yet. So because I just changed companies of vendors on who I went with my trust and estate planning software. But that would probably be the most you'd have to do is actually just file it, but a lawyer has already seen it. So you wouldn't necessarily need another lawyer to look over it. But of course, anytime you have the opportunity to have your own lawyer look at things, I always recommend that. Because always that's someone you know and trust. But basically we can set up trusts. Revocable living trusts are the most common. We can set up wills, and again, guardianship designations, all of those sorts of things for estate planning.
Okay. Well, it sounds like you've got it covered.
I try.
So would you like to give people some contact information for how they can get in touch with you if they're interested?
Sure. So my website is usually the easiest. And it's www.cifinancialplanning.com. So the company is called Conscious Impact Financial Planning, but that was a very long website. So just CI for Conscious Impact, and then the words financialplanning.com. You can also email me directly at Meghan@cifinancialplanning.com, and Meghan is spelled MEGHAN. We also have a Facebook page. and that is facebook.com/CI financial planning or CI financial planning. And I think that should, I have a LinkedIn, and that would be linkedin.com/Meghan.Lape. But I think that's all my different contact info.
Okay. Well, thanks so much for being here today. And I hope this information was helpful to everybody. And I hope that everybody will, give you a call if there's anything that you can do to help them. And thanks for being here.
Yeah, absolutely. I serve all 50 states, but we are primarily located in Texas and Colorado. But I welcome any inquiries. And if it's a small question, I'm really happy to help out. Like if it's just something not worthy of financial planning necessarily, but something small. I really do love serving the polyam community just because I find it helps me solve my own problems sometimes too. So I look forward to hearing from people who think the way I do.
Okay. Well, thank you so much for being here. And everybody, please check out Meghan's website. Okay. And we'll see you next time.
Thank you so much.